talking about the C# features, we have tried to understand why we need to take the C# as the language in .NET framework. Certain advantages are there, and we are going to slowly understand one by one. So C# is a component-oriented language. That means the first component-oriented language in the C and C++ family. So what are the components? Basically, the components are like plugins. We can say in today's terms, the plugins or some small snippets which you can connect to do some functionality. So those were generally called at the 2K era. So the components were heavily written in C, C++ uh, languages. So those components were lying across the internet, but some of the plugins are heavily used and some of them are not at all used, despite being there very sophisticated and very performance oriented. So some complexities are there because uh, whoever want to get connected to that component needs to understand that component in the first place. Then they have to write the wrappers to connect them and get their functionalities. So yesterday we just discussed there is a payment the gateway kind of plugin where one bank is opening that plugin so that any customer can connect to that plugin and they can do the transaction. So if there is some kind of component existing in the bank's like library. So suppose I want to use those components, then I have to first of all I have to understand and write the component, and then accordingly I have to prepare the wrapper from my language so that it can be used. So before this C#, there is no particular language which is primarily targeting the components so that they are being used. Okay, so that was the basic disadvantage. And C# was in its design goal itself, they have taken that it should be the component compatible language. So they have given every kind of effort uh, to provide that compatibility. And so that's why this is the first component oriented language in the C++ family as such we can consider. Then everything really is an object. So some, as we discussed, some are object oriented languages and some are object compliant languages. Okay, so object oriented compliant languages. So most of the languages, even C++ is also not completely object oriented language we can say, but at least 90% it conforms to the OOPS paradigms. So in this .NET framework, they have literally started everything from an object. So when they are writing the framework with the use of the classes and libraries, uh, first of all, they have created an object, and on that basis, they have created entire this library or the framework. So that's why if you take any button, if you take any class, component, widget, anything, if you take, you are nothing but creating a completely object oriented programming. Okay, so you are 100% doing the object manipulations only. So everything is really an object in .NET framework. Then enables one-stop programming. If you know one of these languages like C#, VB, mostly we will talk about the C# only because it is in our syllabus. And um, uh, so we are going to talk about only exclusively about this C# only. So when you know this language, you are going to certainly use this where we can write the websites, where we can create the Windows programming services, we can write the mobile applications. So in that way, it is we can consider like one-stop programming. You don't have to learn different languages for doing different things. Then there are no header files, ideals like we see with many languages. If you are working with the C, C++, certainly you are going to implement some header files. And similarly, if you are writing, like we have seen also, the thrift files, you are about to write these ideals, okay, interface definition language files. So in this C#, you don't have to bother about those things. Header files and ideals are exclusively, they have been like deprecated. so nobody is going to use in C Sharp. Then they can be embedded in web pages. The languages, the components actually can be embedded in web pages. Okay, so here, uh, then when we are talking about the components, actually components need to be given with these kind of implementations. Okay, so first of all, when the components are written, they were not at all objects. Okay, and they are required to be supported by these extra files. Now, by using this C sharp, all these are not relevant, and the components can be simply embedded in web pages. When you write the programming for any component, you have to write the programming in C sharp only. But whenever you are going to write that component connectivity, they can be simply embedded in your web pages or any other application that you are developing. Then integrated documentation using XML. It's very fast. So parallelly, you can comment as well as you can prepare the documentation simultaneously without any issues. So that is very fastly how we can create our documentation. Otherwise, the documentation is a separate effort that we have to put for preparing a proper documentation for your application. But whereas integrated documentation feature is there, whenever you are applying some comments, the comments are aggregated and accordingly it is going to define the definition of that method, the input parameters, their types, and if you are providing additional information like remarks and other things, you are going to explain everything in that documentation, why it is used, how and where it has to be applied. So these concepts will be automatically coming into your documentation. So this is one more advantage. Then design time and runtime attributes. So attributes, as of now, you may not be easily identify what these attributes are. When you see the coding, then only you can understand what are the attributes. So there is a support for design time as well as runtime attributes. Okay, so what is the use of the attributes? Attributes are used for taking taking some decisions while at the runtime or at the design time. Okay, so for example, uh, yeah, suppose you are working in a different programming language. Okay, and you want to compile everything. You are working in a very big organization. There are so many modules, and you are going to compile to create a executable file. But whereas suddenly some decision has been taken to stop some of the modules to be compiled. Okay, so at runtime, runtime means it's not the actual compiler runtime. While at the time of the preparing at the last minute, you have to go to those modules. They have to be commented. They have to be accordingly tested also. Then only you are in a position to recompile, and it will take again 1 or a couple of days. It's not easy if you are talking a very big project in which some hundreds of modules are interconnected and some libraries are getting referred everywhere, where you are commenting some part of the code, and you may not be guaranteeing that it will be working smoothly without any issues. You have to check accordingly for the proper application running. Okay, so these things are very trickier, so that the attributes are coming to your help in .NET framework. Simply what you can do is you can provide some attributes like compilation no or yes in that way, and that part is being skipped by the compiler at the time of compilation. So it's very easy and it's very fast. So you can provide those settings either at the design time or at the runtime. Even that means at the runtime also you can specify with the attributes whether to omit some portions of the code, whether to compile in another way, or expose some functionalities. So there are some different kinds of aspects are there. So all these things are possible with these attributes. Okay? Then next generation robust and durable software. When you are going to create a .NET application, you are going to be certainly sure that it's a very durable product that you are making in the first place. Okay, then preservation of the investment. So with the previous technologies like in the C++ families, most of the things were like if you even if you have developed a very good product, there are going to be certainly some issues related with the architectures, current latest platforms. Maybe some of the portions may not be working, some memory leaks may be occurring. So they have to be properly tested and worked out. Otherwise, it's not a smooth affair. But whereas if you are writing in C sharp, you are taken care of so many things, and you are saved of your effort, cost, time, and preservation of the investment. Okay, then everything really is an object in C sharp. So traditional views of the different languages we can see. In C++ and Java, primitive types are actually magical types and do not interoperate with the objects. Actually, we have two types of like primitive types means the the stack based we can consider. Okay, there are two kinds of data types we can have at any time. One is stack based and one more is heap based. Okay, so when you declare any integer or some like boolean, you are going to basically work on the primitive data types, and they are considered in C++ and Java languages like the magical parts because they are not actually objects, and they do not generally interoperate with the objects. But in C sharp, because everything is an object actually, even if you are working on the stack based implementation, it is in such as such it is an object. Actually, some wrappers are there. You will come to know gradually how it is being operated in that way. So when we go down to the concepts, then you can understand how it is actually basically written by taking exclusively everything as an object. Then Smalltalk and Lisp, primitive types are objects but at greater performance cost. Some languages are there where primitive types are actually objects. They have created those languages. You can see Smalltalk, which is a very old language actually. Lisp. These languages are providing primitive types are objects, but at performance cost. Okay, so every language is having some kind of plus and minuses. So everything is not object in their platforms actually. But in C sharp, everything is really is an object, and they have created in that way. Okay, so they have taken initially an object. On that object, they have extended their functionality so that to create a big library or what we call as framework. And C sharp unifies with no performance cost. So deep simplicity throughout the system. Then you can unify your code whether you are writing to any different kind of application, whether you are working on mobile applications or Windows services. You can simply unify the code without any performance degradation, and you are going to save so much of effort. And improved extensibility and reusability. New primitive types have been created like decimal, SQL data types, then collections, etc. work for all types, and it provides robust and durable software. There is a garbage collection, which you already know in other languages. The GC is responsible for primarily taking away all the garbage from your memory. So no memory leaks and stray pointers will be there when you are working in .NET framework, because garbage collection automatically takes care of the unused objects by identifying with some flags, and after some 2 to 3 scans it is going to uh, remove those data by cleaning them, so that to have your application will be again regaining its memory. Okay, so in that way garbage collection background is a background operation which continuously works whenever we are running that application in your operating system. Then exception handling is there. You know this exception handling. Almost every language is offering this particular feature. It has to be there because programmer generally makes some mistakes, and some are design time mistakes and some are runtime mistakes or errors, and they have to be safely catched. Otherwise, your application will get crashed. So that to avoid those situations, we generally use these exceptions. Then type safety. No uninitialized variables, unsafe tasks. It's a very important concept in .NET framework actually in its entirety, not only C sharp language. The languages by default provide this type safe mechanism. So what is this type safe means? You have declared one variable as like a double. Double is a big data type. You can cast to integer, but whereas in another if you are working in another language, it may be easier to convert accordingly to another data type or with the lower data type from the higher order, but it may not create some problems. But in C sharp, you cannot do in that way. Everything has to be typecasted. Okay, so no uninitialized variables are accepted. You have to initialize any variable you are declaring. Then unsafe casts are also not supported. Okay, so type safety is one of the major um, blocking point for the for testing actually. So your programming language is actually complying with this type safety. That means you are going to save at least 20 to 30% of the debugging efforts, which otherwise are required in most of the projects. Okay, because type safe errors are very heavily identified, and to identify that it is due to from that type safe improper casting, it takes some time. Okay, it's directly not visible unless the compiler is not actually complying. If the compiler is compiling, then at the development time itself it gets removed. But sometimes some runtime casting will be happening automatically in a very complex code, so that it's not easily understandable by the programmers where that particular thing is getting happening. Okay, no, that is a very major issue when the testing is concerned. So that's why the C# family and the .NET family has entirely taken care of this type safe mechanism, and the compiler will never allow you to define if you are typecasting to in a non-stricter manner. Then versioning, pervasive versioning considerations in all aspects of language designing. So versioning is automatically being taken care of. So you can exclusively manually put some versioning like major and minor versioning also. But by default it supports the versioning for each of the compilation. Then preservation of the investment. The C++ heritage is actually we can utilize, and then interoperability. What software is increasingly about, like MS C Sharp implementation talks to XML, SOAP, COM, DLLs, and any .NET language. So all these are by default supported by this platform. Okay, so there is no exclusive separate thing that you are going to write for this interoperability. Then millions of lines of code, C Sharp code is already in .NET. That means the .NET framework is actually built by using this C Sharp language. Okay, so that means every .NET framework language is basically constructed with this uh, C Sharp language, and that's why how robust and how stable it is, you can easily understand. It's almost there from 2 decades. So 2 decades, it has been very robust, and it has given the highest performance. And the short learning curve is one of the major advantage, because whenever any developer is coming from the Java or C++ family, they have to simply invest 10% of the learning to actually getting in grip of this C sharp. Okay, because everything will be looking like they know everything. The braces, the declarations, the way of doing the blockings, everything is somewhat appealing to them because it is already being known to them, and thereby the productivity is also there, because when learning curve is so small, your productivity is getting increased automatically. And this is the sample hello world functionality in a particular class called hello. I don't think I should be explaining this particular piece of code. Everybody should be able to easily identify, because you all are well versed with Java and C++. So most of the terms like what is a class, what is this hello, hello is a class name, static, what is the meaning of this static, most of you already know. Void, what it does. Main, this is the main method, and the starting of the braces for this method, and some lines. So you may not be knowing this console.writeLine. Console is an object, and this is a method. So this much of part you have to concentrate. Other than this, everything you already know. So these are packages, but in .NET framework they are called as namespaces. Okay, so it is looking like in this way. The C# language is looking like in this way. So programming structure for the C#, first of all we have to declare the namespaces. Okay, so namespaces are generally written on top of this particular class file, and you can provide one or more namespaces or packages. In the parallel term it is called package in Java, but in we generally use the term namespace in the .NET framework. So whenever we are going to implement some namespaces, they can contain types and other namespaces. That means namespaces can also be nested. Nested in the sense, you may be having a .system .net .tcp. So in that way, the net is an nested namespace which is available under the system. Like TCP is a nested namespace which is available under the net. So in that way, the namespace mechanism is provided in a nested way. Then type declarations, classes, structs, interfaces, enums, delegates. Only this part you might not be knowing. We will come to know at the last of this particular PPT. So classes, structs, you already know, interfaces where they have to be used, and enums. So all these are type declarations you have to first of all declare before creating anything for your C# programming structure. That means sometimes you are going to create with that type declaration, and sometimes you may be using the members. That means the functionalities. The functionalities will be containing the constants, fields, methods, properties, indexes, events, operators, constructors, and destructors. So all these are the parcel of these members. Okay. So members means everything which are actually being used for the purpose of the functionality. आप जिस functionality के लिए इसको use करेंगे, they are generally considered as members. Then organization, no header files, code written in line, no declaration order dependence. Okay, so there is no sequential operation you have to be provided with, like you do with the PHP and other languages, or otherwise you don't have to provide the separate header files, because when you are writing the header files, you are actually you are getting the content from somewhere else. Okay, so these header files are actually being replaced by these namespaces, but namespaces are not a simple file. Namespaces are, again, they are objects. Okay, so in that way everything is cleanly aligned so that to have a neater implementation in your projects. So we will be having sometimes namespaces, and you have to declare type declarations. Obviously members are the part of the functionalities that you are going to expose for your application, and you are going to depend on some libraries and some extra stuff. And there is one more example which is somewhat higher, by taking, this is a root namespace. Okay, using system is the root namespace in .NET. Then you can define your own namespace also with this way, name system.collections, or you can create with your company name whatever the department name .HR, some financial. So in that way also you can create your own specific namespace. Under this namespace you can write some classes. Okay, so this is a .NET framework class actually that is being shown here in this as part of an example. And the class is basically is having some events also, some variables, some methods. Okay, then the methods are being called. So everything is aligned in this way. Some exceptions are also being thrown here. You can see throw new invalid operation exception. So that in that way you can see the C# coding which you have to use invariably in your project. Okay, maybe at least 70% of the code looking like similar, like with any other Java or C++ code. Okay. Now we will see go into the deeper details of the basics and other language constructs. So C# language basics, statements and comments. C# is First of all, case sensitive language. Yes, the same case with the Java and C language. It is completely case sensitive. Statement delimiter is semicolon. This is also same. Block delimiter is curly braces. This is also same. Single line comment is this. Block comment is this. So everything is same. Okay. So everything is same if you know the Java or C++. And I am supposing that everybody is at least know the concepts under the C++ or Java. Then conditional operators. Yes, you can see and understand. This is also same. Double equals, where we are going to check with some equality. Not equals, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, then ampersand, that is for and pipe operator, that is for or. These conditional operators are also pretty much same, which you find generally in C++ like families. C++ like families means it can be a JavaScript, it can be a Java, it can be any influenced language coming from the C++. So the languages which are influenced from the C++ languages are generally called as C++ family. So Java is one of the language, one of such language. Then data, all data types derived from system.object. So system.object, this is the class actually, and this is the root namespace. System is the root namespace in which there is a class which is called as an object, and everything is derived from. You can see I am highlighting this. All data types and all definitions are actually derived from this. And sometimes you might be asking in your interviews also, what is the root namespace in the .NET framework and what is the root object? You have to say system.object. If there is no system.object, there is no any other variable or file you can class you can create in that .NET framework. Okay. So how to declare? In this way, we have to declare data type, whatever the data type like int. Then what is the variable name? Age. So in that way, we can define, and they have to be initialized. CSharp does not automatically initialize local variables, but it will give a warning. If you are if you are having some uninitialized variables in your program, then it will give some warning so that to initialize with some value. If you do not have any default value, then keep that as 0, at least something like that. Later on, it can be changed programmatically when your application is getting run. Okay, at least at runtime they can be changed automatically. So conditional statements. This is how the if block is looking like to put your conditions, and some else block is there. If it is matching with this, then only it goes into this particular block. Otherwise, it will skip to the next block, which is in the else part. Then this is how we can create the switch. This is the case, and case is matching with 2, then this particular part is going to be run, and there is a break from this functionality. And in that way, you can provide the cases 1, 2, 5, 10, 15, 25. And there is a default case also, which is not at all matching with any of the cases provided. If it is not at all matching, then it goes to the default and executes this particular statement. So this is how the switch block actually runs. Then for block, there is an index, there is a variable, it is nothing but a variable. So there is an index that is initialized to 0, and for all the less than 100, it is getting incremented. It's normal C++ kind of syntax. There is no speciality in this. Okay. So similarly, while this particular block is also generally you might have seen in across all the programming languages. When there is any matching condition, the matching condition it should not be less than 0. Till that time it gets executed. Then do while. So it's similar to while, but do while just does, it ensures that at least one time it is being run. Do while what it does, at least one time it is getting run. Thereafter, if the condition is not matching, then it is up to the logic. However you have written that logic, it is up to that logic whether to execute many times or it has to simply skip. Then C sharp uses for each. It's a specific advanced kind of implementation where you can iterate through some arrays or some hash lists in an easier way, and it's completely type safe. Generally you will be getting some errors whenever your index is not matching with this uh, suppose uh, suppose there is a probability of getting the index is actually exceeded. So these kind of errors may be happening with this for block, but with this for loop, for each loop, it will not be certainly there. If there are 32 elements, only 32 times it will get executed. It will never seek for the 33 times, even though you have mistakenly given as the length of the array. So it will never occur. So that's why it is more safer to use this for each, and whereas it supports the classes, objects entirely. So it's pretty easier to create the logic quickly without bothering about the logical errors. So if you want to prepare code quickly without logical errors for bigger, when you are manipulating bigger objects, not the normal integers, normal booleans, nor any other simple types. In those cases, for each is a very excellent kind of code block that you can create safely without bothering much on the debugging things that you have to perform later on. So iteration of the errors is quickly we can do with this for each, and it's very safe also. And iteration of the user defined collections. Suppose this is an object, you have this customer's object, and for every customer which is available in this customer object, you can find out the number of orders for each of the customer, and accordingly you can match out with some condition so that to decide upon the further line of execution. Arrays, again, like in C sharp, it is zero based type bound implementation. It's a data type actually. Again, everything is an object in .NET, so that's why you are taking any kind of data type. Basically, you are creating an object. So that is the first thing that you have to remember. Okay, you take any class, arrays, interfaces, delegates, events, variables, anything you take in .NET is nothing but you are actually creating an object. In true concept, that means OOPS compliant, object oriented programming language compliant object that you are creating in the first place. So it's built on the arrays are built on the system.array base class, and some different types are there. That is, first one is single dimensional. Generally, you find in all the programming languages, and some are in two dimensional, and some are multi-dimensional that are called as jagged dimensions. Okay, so multi-dimension array usages are very low because we generally do not see these kind of implementation. It tends to be highly complex implementations whenever you are creating the content with these jagged arrays. Okay, so how to create these? There are some examples given here. There is a variable which we have declared here, and it is being initialized. Okay, see here in the integer array we are instantiating with a new operator. Why we are instantiating with new? Because it's an object. Okay, so even though if you are initializing in this way, instantiating in this way or not, basically you are going to create an object in the first place. Okay, sometimes the code will be there like without new keyword also you can provide, but still it's an object. So two-dimensional example is here, and jagged dimensional arrays are in this way. So some further explanation is given on this arrays. So that yes, some supported methods are there. Like we can sort the array, we can reverse the array, we can find out the index of a particular element in the given array, and we can find out similarly what is the last index of a particular occurrence. Suppose you have the occurrence of 35 5 times. So what is the last index of 35 occurring in that array? So it may be the index of occurring for the fourth time, or the index is maybe at 25th time. So in that way, it will give the result. So all these are methods which are supported by default whenever you are applying an array in your program. So how to call this? These are some samples. So you can take the length of the entire array by taking into this variable myLength, and you have to simply call myLength dot myArray dot length. So directly gives the length of this array, and it will save that information in this. So index of, you have to calculate the index of a particular occurrence, and you can find out that. So all these are methods supported for each of the defined data type. So array is also one of the data type. Then so we can take the parameter arrays also, and they are type safe. Unlike C++, they are completely type safe, and the implementations are we can see in this particular example. So parameter arrays are generally given for the methods only. In Java also it is there. Okay, in Java and in other programming languages also it is there. Why we take these parameter arrays? Because when you don't know how many values are being pumped into this method, suppose you have a method signature having the parameter 1, parameter 2, and parameter 3, but your application requires so many parameters runtime, you do not know how many parameters are going to be supplied by the user when he takes any decision, because he may be selecting a drop down, and in that drop down he may be selecting some 10 items, and those 10 items you want to supply as part of the parameter array. Generally we do not supply, we will not supply in that way. We generally create an object, and in that object we generally pump the data, and through that object manipulation only we do the thing. But suppose in that case, if you are implementing the parameter areas, then the user selection will be discretion up to him. So he may be selecting 10 items, he may be selecting 5 items, and you do not know while you do the programming. So that's why you have to take these parameter areas. Suppose he takes only 3, uh, he selects only 3 items, then 3 parameter array arguments are being supplied. So in that way, all these 3 are, you are going to iterate it through some do while or something else, and you can get the functionality. You can get the required functionality later on, and it works similarly for all the number of iterations. Either the user is applying for 5, 50, or 5,000. Okay. Then properties. These are the excellent encapsulating feature which is provided by the object-oriented programming language. Properties are generally there. These are called in general get set methods in your other programming language like Java. Okay, so the get set methods are actually, this is the get method and this is the set method which is combined in a property. So this whole part is called as property. So what is the advantage of taking a properties? Properties ensures that they are working like smart fields. Suppose you are going to declare a variable integer age, where you generally expect that age is going to be defined by from 1 to 100 only. Normally the age cannot be more than 100. But in your programming language, if you are declared in this way without any property, there is a chance that user has supplied 5,000 here, and as it is a acceptable data limit for this end, so it will never complain. The programming language never complain about this input data if you are not validating the user data while at the form submission or at any other business logic layer. It is going to be simply accepted, and you are going to save the data in the database also. But it generally do not happen like the age of a person is something like 5,000. So how to validate properly, smartly, and without any headaches? So there comes with the uses of the properties. Okay.